How you guys doing? Good? Good. Hey, Sean.
Hey, Harley, how's it going?
It's doing good, yeah.
Good.
It's hot in here, right? A little bit? All right. So what should we talk about?
I got a few questions here.
Sure.
I thought I'd ask. First of all, congratulations, Merle.
I love that you guys clap for my mom. She, I talk a lot about hustle and a lot about hustling, but she's the OG hustler and taught me everything I know. So props to moms everywhere.
So, Harley, it's been said that you're the yang to Toby's yin or yin to his yang. But not everyone realizes that you were actually one of the first customers of Shopify, and I understand one of the most relentless ones. I think you called so often about Shopify that they finally just got frustrated and gave you an account for free, right?
Yeah, so the backstory there is I was in law school in 2005 to 2008 or so, and about halfway through law school, I needed to support myself and decided that the way I would do that was to sell T-shirts, and I needed a way to do that. And I'd met Toby. He had just transitioned from selling snowboards to building this incredible piece of software for other people to sell products. And so I started selling T-shirts with a company called Smoofer on Shopify as one of their first customers. And being the cheap Jew that I am, I decided that the $29 price plan was way too expensive, of course, and I wanted to maximize as much revenue as I possibly could. So I would call him or email him and say, hey, can I get a discount? And I think eventually he just rage quit and he's like, forget it, just here's a free account, please stop bugging me. And that was the start of our relationship, which is pretty awesome.
So when you joined in 2010, right, how many employees were there, about 10, 12?
Something like that, yeah, definitely under 20 people then. And most of the people that were working in Shopify at the time were really technology people. They were developers and designers. And so I was one of the first kind of business people that walked in there. And yeah, it's funny, I just realized I spent about a fifth of my life at Shopify. And it's pretty cool. I feel very lucky to say that.
So, and how many, there's what, about 1,000, 2,000 people now? It's your...
Somewhere between that number, yeah.
But I remember seeing there was a picture earlier this year when you onboarded on a Monday, I think, 70 or 80 people?
Which is like 4 or 5 times how many people we had when I started, and that's how many people started on one particular day just a couple weeks ago.
So it's kind of mind-boggling when you think about it. Like in the BlackBerry book, they went from onboarding a couple of people every Monday to filling up a conference center. How do you... Talk a little bit about how the culture has shifted, like how you manage and maintain the culture of a company from when you're like 10 or 20 people to hiring 80 a week.
Yeah. So for those of you, by the way, how many people sort of self-identify as entrepreneurs in the room, just by show of hands? Okay, so most of you, which is awesome. So this is really important because when you start a business or you're early in a business, you're able to sit around the table with everyone at the company. You're able to share pizza, have coffee, and really have this incredible communication where any idea you have you can bounce off in kind of real time. And so we always took the approach that, we'd love to all be in one room, and if we can't be in one room, let's be in one office. If we can't be in one office, let's be in one building, or one city, or one time zone. And now we actually just recently opened up our first American office in San Francisco. So one of the things that's been really important was how do we scale not only communication, but authenticity, and all the things that we think make Shopify so special. And so a couple things that have worked really well for us that you guys are welcome to take, and we stole from other people, so certainly you can steal this from us, but almost every single Friday we do an AMA, an Ask Me Anything. I know Alexis was just talking about, AMA is obviously a Reddit invention, but where anyone in the company can ask us any questions they want, and through an upvote, downvote system, we will answer them. We also have this kind of term we call default to open, which is that there are no secrets at Shopify. So every quarter we have a board meeting, and we write a letter to the board. That's kind of the way we do it at Shopify. Other people do a deck or whatever. We do a letter, and we actually share the letter that we share. The letter that we share to the board, we also share to the entire company. And so the idea really is that everyone really has this free flow of information. They know what's going on. They can question things. They can debate things with us. That's been really helpful. And so now we have over 1,000 people spread across 5 offices. And I think by being transparent, we've been able to scale as much as we possibly can.
Have you heard any criticisms from people saying, well, geez, this wasn't the way it used to be, or you guys are getting too corporate or anything like that? Are there any sort of things that come in and how do you deal with them when that comes, especially I guess probably from the old guard?
Yeah. So there's this weird thing that people like to talk about. They call it the good old days. You've heard your grandparents talk about it and good old days. I actually think the good old days, I think that concept is bullshit. I think that what you try to do is you try to find, like, I think every day can be the good old days, or maybe tomorrow will be the good old days. But look, there are some people that really want to work at a company with 5 people and don't want to work at a company with over 500 people. And we have, those people have some of them have moved on. But for the most part, everyone has everyone is still at Shopify. And the reason is we're a company that really, we center our philosophy around personal growth. We want to be a company where each individual is really, really comfortable with being uncomfortable. And we feel like if we present people that work with us great challenges, an opportunity for them to grow every single day, they're gonna find value in staying with the company over a longer period of time. The other thing is, we now have more than 275,000 merchants selling billions of dollars every year on our platform. That means that if you're a marketer, or you're a content writer, or you're a developer, or designer, or a business developer, the decisions that you make, the things that you're doing, impacts millions and millions of people all over the world. As an entrepreneur at my core, and as someone that cares about this stuff, that's really fucking cool. That means I can do something, and it's gonna have a massive impact. And I think the people that realize that are the ones that are doing great.
You guys actually have a culture team as well, right? Like, how long has that been around? What do they do? Like, how do you measure success of a, what are the measurables of success of a culture team?
I mean, there's some obvious metrics you can look at. You can look at employee engagement and stuff, and there's surveys, but I think that's all. I mean, that's all fine and good, but really, we do have a culture team, and the culture team's goal is to make sure that as a company, we can scale that. And I think culture is a bit of a grab bag for a bunch of problems. It's like saying we have a communication problem. Well, that's a grab bag for a bunch of other issues. You just kind of are able to bucket it into communications. But the culture team's job is to make sure that we as a company get better as we grow. Not necessarily the same, because holding on to the status quo is never gonna work when you're growing as fast as we are. But as we grow, that we scale authenticity, that the people that work there understand why they're there and why the company is around. So on a practical level, the culture team does things like they help with Friday town halls, and they help plan the Shopify Summit, where we bring everyone together. But on a more nuanced level, their job is to make sure that as we grow Shopify, their job is that the good old days are always going to be still in front of us.
Is there, if you were to define like what a Shopify-ite was, 5 or 6 years ago versus now, would that have changed?
I think in the early days of any company, and I'm sure you guys are seeing, some of you have seen this. Some people come to build a great company, and other people come to be part of a great company. And what's interesting is that even though we're over 1,000 people now, there are still people joining Shopify today that are coming to help us build a great company. And what I mean by that is they believe that whatever we're at right now, that's great, but they believe that we're just getting started, and they really want to invest in the future and help build the future of the company with us. That being said, there are some people who don't want to work at a grungy, scrappy startup. They want to work at a bigger company. And so actually one of the benefits of being public, and we went public last year in May, as some of you know, one of the benefits of it is that we're now able to recruit people that may have not otherwise thought about joining Shopify. Ironically, we're also now starting to see larger brands signing up for Shopify to sell their own products. And by being public and being a bigger brand, it seems like, in some cases, they trust us more. So we are seeing different people coming in, but generally I still think that people that are joining Shopify today or next week, they do have that founder's mentality. They do act like owners of the company, and that's fundamental to us.
Yeah, that's pretty important that they continue to see themselves as wealth creators.
That's right.
So has your approach changed to the way you tell your company's story now compared to 5 years ago, both externally and internally? I mean, maybe talk about the role of media coverage. I mean, you guys are out there, you're putting out your results every quarter, you've got the annual meeting. Obviously, it's a big name in Canada, so the word Shopify, we sell papers probably based on it.
So I would say, by the way, this is your last question, and then I'm actually going to flip it on you, because all these people here that are entrepreneurs, I'd like them to hear a little bit about your thoughts and understanding about how the media can play a role in helping tell your story. So I'll answer this, and then I'm going to flip it on you. So I'll answer this by saying the story has changed in that, from a product perspective, if I asked most of you what Shopify does, you would tell me that we help people build online stores. What I really hope you will all say in 2, 3, 4 years from now is that Shopify helps people sell. Full stop. We want to be a company from a product perspective that lets people sell anywhere they want, online, offline, on Facebook, maybe eventually through VR. If it was 10 years ago, we'd help you sell through MySpace. We want to help people sell wherever it is. So from a product perspective, we are telling a different story. From a media or a PR perspective, honestly, in the early days, we were just trying to get attention any way we could, right? So we created the Build a Business competition with Tim Ferriss in 2010. Because we want to encourage the spread of entrepreneurship, but also it was bold. It was something that other companies of our size weren't doing. Nobody was giving away $100,000 when they were this small, and we were. And so I think that we were reaching for not anything we can get, but we were reaching for things that today I would say I don't think that's as important. I don't think that's as impactful. But that being said, I'm going to flip it on you. And why don't you guys?
So you're going to ask the questions.
I'm going to ask you a question right now.
If you're going to ask the questions.
What are you doing? You're taking off your clothes.
I have to look.
You
like
don't have
Harley.
a black T-shirt underneath, do you? That's pretty fucking cool. That's good. Wow. I have hit peak Silcoff. It's amazing.
Okay, Harley, I'm ready to answer your questions. What do you want to ask me?
So I even have notes because I actually, these are things that I wish I would have asked you 5 years ago when we started talking. In the past, you've actually described your role not just as a journalist, but as a storyteller. What I would love to know is, and we've read the BlackBerry stuff, we've read some of your recent articles, at least most of us have, I think. What are your favorite stories to tell? If I'm a startup, I'm a founder in the crowd right now, and I want to get an amazing story in the Globe and Mail, show my mom and show my friends and show potential customers, what are the stories you like to tell?
Well, I think storytelling it's not the oldest profession, not the second oldest, but it's probably about the third or fourth oldest profession. I mean, people just like great stories, and I sort of define it. It's like the old-fashioned water cooler story. People come back from the weekend. What is it that they're all wanting to talk about around the water cooler on a Monday morning? And typically, it's stories about people or about changes to their life. Like I write about technology, but I don't really write about technology, and I don't think our readers are interested in technology. I think they're interested in what technology does to change their lives, and it's that change that makes it interesting. Also about the people. I mean, entrepreneurs are wonderful characters. A lot of them have, they're relentless, they're crafty, they're really courageous. I mean, I always think about how amazing it is, all of you sort of taking this huge risk with your lives to be entrepreneurs. My grandparents were. They had a restaurant on Park Avenue. I joke that they had a SaaS business, smoked meat as a sandwich.
That actually might work. That's great. I love that. Yeah.
For 40 years, so I've always been drawn to entrepreneur stories, and people seem to love them, especially when there's that moment where all seemed lost and something magic or unexpected happened, and now it's a huge success.
So you love entrepreneurs. What's the worst thing an entrepreneur can do you think? I mean, I think when I first reached out to you back in 2010, I tried to shape a story of where we were going. But for the companies and the founders that are in the room right now, who hopefully will be a Shopify in 5 years from now or have a similar sort of Shopify, what's the worst thing they can do to kind of piss you off? Because I think that's important also.
I think the worst thing an entrepreneur can do generally is give up or listen to people who say it can't be done. In terms of pissing me off, I mean, I wouldn't worry too much about pissing me off. But certainly I get a lot of pitches, and every day a lot. And the one thing I really hate is press releases that read like they were written by an algorithm, and pitch just about anywhere. I mean, BetaKit does its thing, TechCrunch does its thing, the Wall Street Journal does its thing, and for us, we cover the waterfront of the Canadian economy. So there's only so many stories that the Globe and Mail will have on innovation on a given day. So don't assume that what you have to say is the center of my world or that interesting. So assuming that we're going to stop for a pitch, and also if we blow off like a Series A financing or something, doesn't mean that we're not interested. It just means that we're not necessarily interested yet.
So do you see you get a pitch, you say no, or you ignore it, and that entrepreneur or that company kind of drops off because they feel discouraged by that?
I try and be polite to people. I say this may not be the time to write a story. I mean, I'm looking for things like traction, validation, and a hook when I'm writing a story. So, just because you have a cool new app and you've done a product launch, I'm not always going to go for that. But if you sign up 1 million people in a month, or if you're like the Instagram for doctors and 1 million doctors around the world are using your app like Figure One, I mean, that's kind of interesting. That's an example of an early stage company that's having some very significant traction. Or if you've been validated, like let's say, Andreessen led a, $30 or $40 million round. You've brought in all these amazing venture capitalists, and you've hired the COO of Google. that's, or if there's an amazing hook, basically anything as a reader, you'd go, wow, if you read it. So that's kind of what I'm looking for.
So in terms of, so let me bring it back to the Shopify story a little bit. What was it, like, you've been following very carefully, very closely the Shopify story for as long as I've been at the company. What was it? Like, what can they take away that can kind of provide them the same sort of relationships that we have with media, which is really positive and wonderful, and we're very fortunate. What was it about the Shopify story?
Well, it's funny. I was just saying off stage, I was actually started researching Shopify when I was doing a piece about shop.ca, of all things, because it was launching. And
we fared better than they did, I think.
Yeah, I think so, yeah. I hadn't covered tech really in 10 years, and I just picked up an Ottawa Business Journal to find out what was going on in business in Ottawa, and there was Shopify on the front cover. And as I was researching shop.ca, I realized how much the world had changed since .com 1.0, that now you could start an online company and basically just pull all these services off the cloud. And I realized that Shopify was playing this sort of very core role in the e-commerce economy. So what did you guys have that made you interesting, other than just being in my backyard? You had validation. You'd already done, I think, the 22 million or the second round with Bessemer. So obviously you had buy-in from a major US VC, and I talked to them. I got that sense. I was hearing about Shopify from other people I talked to, so that's that validation. And you obviously had serious traction, looking at the number of customers you had. And then I met Toby and was just blown away. I mean, Toby's one of the brightest, most thoughtful and interesting people. And there's not a lot of interesting when you get out of this crowd, CEOs aren't always that interesting.
Yeah, he's special, dude.
And then I met you, and it was like, punch to the side of the head. You're such interesting, different characters. So, you're an innately interesting company to cover for all those reasons.
Right. It's interesting. I know we have to get off in about a minute, but one thing that you said that I want to make sure you guys all picked up on. Everyone's always, swinging for the home run. We want the front page of the Globe and Mail. We want the front page of TechCrunch or the Wall Street Journal. Sean actually read about Shopify when we were on the front page of the Ottawa Business Journal. Just think about that for a second, right? Like that, and the Ottawa Business Journal is our local paper. They're not syndicated outside of Ottawa. It's not a large brand, but because we were able to get that, we were able to meet you, and through that, we've done some other really cool things. I think that's fascinating. Last question before I go, because this is one of the things I was thinking about. Do I do media PR in-house if I'm an entrepreneur starting a company? Do I hire an agency who has crazy contacts? I'm curious to know what you think about that.
I probably can't give great advice without having half the room throw something at me. If you've got a great story, you have to figure out the best way to get it to the paper. I've dealt with companies that had high-priced PR, and I've dealt with companies where the CEO called me up. I'm more likely to respond to a VC or someone like an entrepreneur I know who's just in conversation at the 29th minute of a 30-minute conversation that happens to drop a name. Oh, did you know so-and-so is doing this? So I listen to the people whose opinions I respect a lot, and I put a lot of weight in the people that I've formed relationships with. And I would say probably these days most of my story ideas are coming through the back channels as opposed to a press release, whether it was written by someone on a weekend at home with their partner or by a high-priced PR company.
That's good advice. So just because we're about to finish, one thing I will say, though, is that Canada is not necessarily historically known as a tech hub. And I think over the last 10 years or so, there's this renaissance in Canada. There's great companies being built here. Rather than U.S. companies coming to buy us, we're actually buying them, which is amazing. And I think that, I take a little bit of credit for that, but I actually think you also take a lot of credit for that as well. You and what you think about, the way you tell stories, the way you're telling our story to the Canadian public. My grandmother now knows what Hootsuite is because of you, which is pretty cool. That is really amazing. And so on behalf of all these entrepreneurs here, Sean, thank you for being you. So
Thank you for being you.
Yeah. Amen. Thanks, guys.